Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob, and I'm back with episode number 343 of Shut Up and Grind. We're all about overcoming obstacles, defying the odds, and inspiring you to clear whatever is blocking the path to whatever success you want in this lifetime. So if you're new to the show, I bring guests on from all over the world. I've had guests from 6 of the 7 continents, and our audience spans 65 countries. But again, this isn't about us. It's about inspiring you. So if you ever felt like you're stuck in a rut, or you just feel like you're stuck in that hamster wheel, we use our guest stories, paired up with my stories to maybe give you a glimmer of hope that you can get out of whatever bind you're in. And I've interviewed people from all walks of life, and just the things that are shared here, like there's no story that's too great or too small. Like your story is yours, and you own your story. As soon as you can come to acceptance of, again, whatever it is that you're dealing with, then you can get yourself on the path to healing and recovery. So today, helping me have this conversation, I don't have his card ready. I'm stolen, sorry. Here we go. Is Ed Doherty is going to be joining me. Ed shares raw, real, and often humorous insights from decades of mentoring, managing, and grinding his way through life. So now let's get his story from his perspective, and let's welcome Ed to the show. How we doing?
Thanks. It's great. It's great to have you on. I'm all in on your goal of overcoming obstacles and defying odds. That's kind of my mantra, and changing the world. Changing the world happens one person at a time. So I can relate to what you're talking about.
Awesome. Good. That means this is going to be a fabulous conversation. So you said you're up in Massachusetts. Are you born and raised there?
Yes, I grew up here. I left for 25 years and lived around the country and eventually came back. I don't know why people live here because the weather is so bad, but, I'm here now, so I'm staying.
It's so funny you say that. I say that every winter. I'm like, why do I live here? Every winter. Then summer comes and I love it again. So I understand that. All right. So talk about growing up in Massachusetts. What did that look like for you?
Growing up, I was the oldest of 8 kids.
Okay.
So from my life perspective, I started mentoring at a very young age, probably at 10 years old. I also went to work at 10 years old with a paper route, and then worked in a variety store and, worked my way through college. So I probably had 10 jobs before I graduated from college and 4 since I graduated.
Okay. We have very similar paths. As far as the siblings, I'm on the opposite end. I'm the youngest of 7. And
so you're spoiled, thing, I think. Right? You're spoiled.
Yeah, I was a mama's boy, definitely. But my brother and I, we did a paper route. I was around the same age, around 10. And then from there, I worked in a diner/convenience store. So I learned skills at a pretty early age as well. It's definitely helpful later on in life.
Yep, I would agree. I was in the restaurant business for 30 years. And nothing teaches you how to work like a restaurant does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was about 22 years in, give or take. And over half of that, I started managing at 15. Like I said, the diner was small, but it still got pretty busy in there. And you still have to learn to delegate and time management, not to crack under pressure, all excellent life skills.
Right.
Yes. So, all right. So what took you away from the restaurant industry?
I had always been a volunteer. And, when I was in the restaurant industry, I used to have an expression to differentiate between someone who had interest and someone who was committed. And I used the example of a bacon and egg breakfast. So at a bacon and egg breakfast, the chicken was interested, but the pig was committed. And so when I volunteered for things, I was more or less all in. And one of the organizations I volunteered for several decades had an opening back in Massachusetts for an executive director, and they were drifting towards business management style leadership because of, I guess, financial issues or, resource issues. So that's how I moved back to Massachusetts. I was the executive director for the New England area. changed careers at 45, somewhere in there, 50.
And what was that transition like?
Well, I had always somehow paid attention to generic skills. It wasn't I knew how to delegate to a 17-year-old. I tried to learn how to delegate, regardless of age or situation. So I originally was very nervous because I wasn't sure how much of my skill set could transfer, and I stubbed my toe a time or two. But the majority of my job was interacting with senior volunteers throughout New England, and the color of my hair really helped because the gray hairs chat with each other. And someone asked me how I did my job, because I was responsible for raising several $1 million a year, among other things. And I told them that most of the time I was there, I was a professional lunch eater. I would take someone to lunch and talk to them and find out what they wanted and what we needed. And if there was a match, we discussed it and finalized it. And if there wasn't, we were still friends.
See, I asked that question because that's something that I went through myself. I probably stayed in the restaurant industry 10 years longer than I wanted to. You get that fear, but you also get that loyalty, especially when you're with one restaurant or just one business in general for so long. It's like you don't want to let people down. But then once I shifted over into fitness, I was like, I should have did this like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
So what was the hardest part of that transition, shifting careers?
Well, of course, leaving the restaurant industry, I really missed the nights and weekends. I would say the hardest part of that was, it's going to sound strange, but because I was dealing with volunteers and potential corporate sponsors, I probably had 50 to 60 appointments canceled every year because something came up relative to the business. I would be on the Mass Pike driving 2 hours to get to Boston, and just as I crossed 128, someone would text me and say, I have to cancel our meeting. So that was, I just didn't have leverage over, people didn't have to do what I wanted them to do.
Yeah, that's understandable. Like when I got out, I was forced out. I got fired. And this was in 2009 during the recession. So it made sense. I made a considerable amount more. I was the general manager of the restaurant. And so they let me go and they kept the assistant because I made a lot more than she did. But I had already started doing fitness out of my garage and in local parks. So I had a base already. And it's like the universe intervened and was like, go chase this thing. And I think that's why I lost my job.
Similar to you, during the pandemic, I was furloughed. The organization downsized, and I decided, after being rejected because of my age, I was 70 at the time. After being rejected, I was 68. I decided to just go into business for myself. I had my fingers crossed that people would think I was smart because of the color of my hair. And I had a lot of contacts. And the way I transitioned to a consultant is I said to some of the C-suite people I was familiar with, I'm going to do this, but I don't have any practice. Could I do some pro bono consulting for you so that, I can thank you for what you've done for me, and I can also acquire some skills? And that's how I started. And several of those turned into paying assignments, and I've been off to the races ever since.
Okay, so before we dive back into that stuff, I want to talk about something that you struggled with, just in life. It could be anything, whatever you want to share.
Well, I don't really think I am that talented. There's a is kind of a will and skill matrix. And I
Yeah.
think I'm heavier on the will matrix than the skill matrix. I felt, you're talking about managing a restaurant. When I first got promoted to restaurant manager, I was very, very afraid. I didn't know if I could handle a responsibility or what was going to happen. And I decided that I was just going to work my ass off, that I was going to
Yes.
get up early and stay up late and do whatever I could to. I figured that no one could try as hard as me. That was the one thing I thought I could do better than anybody else was try. And I
Mm.
haven't stopped that.
And I love that answer. Like, I coach high school track and field, and similar to what you said earlier, I told them there's a difference between being a participant and being a competitor. Like, if you just want to be a participant, if this isn't your primary sport, it's going to show up in how you practice. It's like, if you're serious about this, you have to get out here and you have to do what champions do. It's like champions sacrifice. Champions are intentional about their nutrition, and they go above and beyond when it comes to working out. Because I had that same mentality. Because I'm a college dropout. It's like, when I do these interviews, people always ask me, they're like, "Oh, are you a therapist? Are you a counselor?" I've said, "No, I've just been through 50 years of life."
Yeah, right,
And
right.
I developed the skills that I needed to help other people navigate life's drama and challenges, because I've been through it all. Like, this, it's not knocking education, but like, I didn't learn this stuff in the book. Like, I lived through this stuff. And so
Yeah.
getting up here and sharing that story with others, like, it's just been amazing what we were able to do with this podcast.
Yeah, I think that street smarts outweigh book smarts all the time. That's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, if you have both, it's even better. Because I
Yeah.
have some post secondary education. I just don't have a formal degree. Like, I've completed a few certificate programs, but the biggest thing is I traveled the country during right when things reopened after COVID. I traveled the country, um, going to masterminds and learning branding, learning marketing, learning sales, learning how to get on media and all this other stuff. So it's like, I got backdoor educated. So it's like, I know what I'm talking about, but like, I don't have the formal degree. And
Mhm.
to your point, in the restaurant industry, I actually stopped hiring people from the local culinary school, because they were coming in and they weren't battle tested. They're moving at classroom pace, and it's like, yo, you got to pick up the pace. It's like, we're jamming here. So I started hiring only people that had restaurant experience from that point.
Yep. Good strategy. Good strategy.
Absolutely. What do we got here? Steve Bacon says the school of life. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Yeah. So let's get back into your journey. So how did you transition into what you're doing now, and why are you doing what you're doing now?
Well, the furlough was the main impetus for doing that. And when I became a consultant, every job that everybody has requires them to use something they're good at and something they're less good at. I've never seen anything. And so I'm a one-person consulting firm. I love my boss, but I decided that I was only going to do things that I knew how to do, because a lot of the problems in the world are caused by people who are in over their head or doing something for the first time without a mentor. And so I decided I'm only going to play to my strengths. I'm only going to talk about things that I have a lot of experience in, and then I'll have fun at work. And the most surprising thing about being a consultant to me is the lack of anxiety I have. Someone throws something at me and I either know how to handle it or I don't. And I'm old enough to say, that's not I can't help you with that. But this
Nice.
one, yeah, I've been there before. So that's what I like
See,
best. I like my boss and I like doing things that I am good at.
and going back to what you said about not being into what you were doing anymore. I know you said you were furloughed, but deep down, your heart wasn't there. Am I wrong?
Well, At that time, you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yes, and you made the transition into doing something that you're already doing. Like one of the themes I constantly preach on this show is that when people are stuck in a rut, the thing that you really want to do, it's already in your subconscious mind, or you're already doing it and don't even realize that you can ride that into something bigger. Because when I was getting out of the fitness industry, I always knew I wanted to do something with physical fitness, whether it was be a physical therapist, athletic trainer, or just like now, I manage a gym. Like I had my own business at one point, but after COVID, I was like, yeah, I'll go back to managing. But it was already there. I just had to refine the skills. But I went into something that I was already passionate about. And to your point, I have fun every day, even though my days are long. I'm helping people get healthy. I'm helping people become more confident on the podcast. Like I host three different ones per week. This show twice, and one dedicated to obstacle course racing. And I guest speak probably anywhere from 2 to 6 times per week. But when I get home at the end of the day, I'm fulfilled. Even though I might be physically tired, but my soul is fulfilled.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of my clients, I recommended a strategy that they disagreed with, and I was persistent enough to continue. They took my advice and saved a minimum of $300,000 just on that one decision. And I felt great. I felt great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we do this. I mean, yeah, do we get paid to do it? Yeah, that's just icing on the cake. But having someone send me a photo of them in a dress that they haven't been in 10 years, it's like that's the why.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
All right, so you said that this person didn't really want to take your advice. How did you convince them to follow your lead?
Boyish charm, maybe. I can be persuasive, and I think if you interviewed 100 people that have worked with me, they'd tell you I was authentic. And so when you are a CEO and you have somebody you can trust who is authentic, it goes a long way. Now, one of the ways I describe myself, like what exactly do you do, Ed? One of the things I am is I'm a validator. So a leader comes to me and says, I want to do this. What do you think? Well, if I raise my eyebrows or hesitate, it doesn't mean they're not going to do it. It just means they're going to rethink it. On the other hand, if they come to me and say, I have this great idea, what do you think? And I go, I love it. We're off to the races. And a lot of times people at the C-suite level don't have somebody they can talk to like that, somebody they can bounce ideas off. So that's how I'm doing it.
See, one big thing, let me see if you agree with this. One big thing, I think why people get stuck on things is because not everyone is a visionary. Because like I find here, even in the gym, when like before people even take a class, we'll sit down and be like, what do you want to accomplish? And then we break it down deep. Like, what does that look like? How will that make you feel? How will that impact your family? And we want to get layers deep. And I want to assume that's very similar to what you do, because people are coming to you looking for change, but people fear change. So how do you help them step into that fear and through that fear?
Well, I use mirrors. I think the biggest one of the biggest inefficiencies in business is when people don't hold up a mirror. And they're trying to figure out what's wrong, and they go, oh, they would have saved themselves a lot of time if they had held up a mirror. So I recommend you start there first, because it just saves you a lot of time. I think that if I could categorize characteristics of successful people I have met or worked with over the years, self-awareness would be very close to the top.
Absolutely.
Self-awareness is really a gift. And, if you continue that thread, self-awareness comes from accepting feedback. which generally comes from a mentor. So when you put a mentor and, one of my cliches is feedback is a gift. If
Yes.
you put those together, you're going to get better. You're just going to grow. One of the stories that I tell is I had a large territory in Southern California years ago. I had more than 50 restaurants. And the regional vice president one day wanted to tour some stores with me. So we got in his car, I got in my car, we drove around, we looked at the stores, and on the way back, I stopped at this Texaco station. Because I was driving about 50,000 miles a year, I made sure that I filled up before I went home. So I pulled into the Texaco station. I went right to pump number 3. I pulled out my card from the visor. I had a receipt envelope ready to go. I pumped the gas. I got back in the car, and he said, "Ed, you know what you do best in your job?" I said, "What?" Because he'd been with me all day. He says, "You get gas better than anybody else that works for me." And I went, uh-oh. And I begged for his feedback. I got a lot of it. And instead of it being a battle for us, it turned into a weekly training class. And he needed somebody to take over the San Francisco market. And he pointed to the guy who could get gas. And then eventually he went into the corporate office and they needed a regional vice president. And I got that job. And I can tell you that I got the job because I could get gas and I could accept feedback.
See, and to piggyback on that, the problem with feedback is people take feedback as criticism.
Yes.
Instead of a learning moment. Like over the weekend, I emceed an event, and right before I was ready to go, I was speaking with someone. We got to talking, and she said that she had a terminally ill disease. And so I had said, just keep in mind, I was like, healing begins in the mind. And for whatever reason, she took offense to that. And I'm not in the business of offending people. It's like I'm optimistic. I'm happy-go-lucky. I'm a motivational speaker. You know what I mean? Like everything I do in my life is to uplift people. So my twin boys were with me. They're 16, so they get antsy. So they were ready to leave, but like I could not leave there until I made sure she understood. See, like when it comes to feedback, people want to get defensive and they want to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. That's not what it was about. So we sat for maybe 45 minutes. We ended it very, very connected. We ended with a hug. We just made a new friend for life because we took the time. I wanted to understand why she got offended, and I wanted her to understand why I said what I said. And then we found that common ground and we bonded.
That's a great example. In my experience, people talk about glass ceilings all the time. And sometimes the organization or society sets a glass ceiling, but the inability to accept feedback is a self-imposed glass ceiling. It every time when you are the smartest person in the room and you already know everything, you aren't going anywhere. It's one of my other cliches is that you run into people who are trying to climb the ladder all the time in a corporation. And one of the things I say is make sure your ladder's against the right wall because you get to the top and it isn't going to get you what you want.
True. That's right. And if it's not the right wall, it can go through the wall.
Yes.
So you don't want that either.
Yep.
All right. So describe a particularly difficult client that you've worked with. Like, I know you mentioned the one a second ago, but was there someone that just fought you every step of the way?
No, I don't have people fight me every step of the way. And as I am a pleasant person. I understand my spot. I'm not on a power trip. If you disagree with me, I live to fight another day, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't. I am still good friends or good contacts with every client I've ever had. I just had breakfast with someone I worked with for a couple of years, and she missed me, so we had breakfast together. And we caught up. So I am. That hasn't happened to me yet. I'm sure it will. and I'm sure I'll be crushed when it does, but it hasn't happened to me yet.
Yeah, like that's why I go through the vetting process the way I do when people come into the gym, because I want to find out right away if this person's going to be difficult. Because I'm like, this is going to be hard. I'm like, we start you where you are, but then over time, I am going to redefine your comfort zone, right? And just because some people just want to stay in their bubble, but again, you can't stay the same and change. Like life doesn't work that way.
Right. Well, one of the things in your role and in any mentor role, there are things you have to say that people don't want to hear.
Yes.
And that takes courage. Sometimes it takes permission. With the story I tell, as I mentioned to you via email, I ran my first marathon when I was 70. Well,
when you were 70?
Huh? What?
You said when you were 70?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So that started when I was 60, and my wife suggested that maybe I was spending too much time on the couch and maybe I should get out and walk. So I started walking. I walked every day for more than a year, and then one day I said, maybe I could run. And I ran 100 yards, and I was in shock that I didn't collapse or whatever. So a week later, I decided I'm going to run a mile. And the same thing happened. I was in shock. I was able to run a mile and at 60, and I was like, this is way cool. So eventually I ran some 5Ks, and then I ran a 10K. And there is a road race in Falmouth, the Falmouth Road Race along the shores of Cape Cod, where 12,000 people run from one bar to another bar. That's how it originally started 50 years ago. It's 7 miles. The humidity is 80%. I ran that, raised money for the nonprofit, loved it. And then I said I had a trainer who started out as my physical therapist. And I said to my trainer, maybe I could run a half marathon. And she said, it's about time you realize that. And so she guided me through it. I ran a half a dozen half marathons. And when I was 68, I said, maybe I could run a marathon. And she said, well, it's about time you figured that out. So I started training for 2 years. I got a nutritionist. I stayed away from certain beverages, if you know what I mean. I did a lot of training, and I got a number for the Boston Marathon. However, COVID got in the way. And so anybody running that year had to run virtually. They couldn't run Hopkinton to Boston. And my wife was not in favor of this at all. So I said, well, if there's some place where I can do laps, and have an aid station and sit down if I need to, can I do it? And she said yes. So I designed this course around the outside of Fenway Park.
Okay.
47 laps around the outside of Fenway Park. I set up an aid station at one of the bars, patios, and I had a doctor. He was an obstetrician, but I never told my wife. My brother and son were there, and I ran 26.2 miles in 6 hours and 18 minutes around the outside of Fenway Park when I was 70 years old.
That's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. See, so what I got out of that is I want to dive more into that conversation of your wife telling you to get off the couch. But I have a keynote presentation called Becoming Who You Are Meant to Be. And that's what I was thinking of as I was listening to you talk. It's like you had this big goal, and then you became who you needed to be to make that goal. You stayed away from certain drinks. You got a nutritionist. You got a trainer. You did all of the things. And like that's what shows like this. And there's other shows out there that broach this topic. But it's like we can talk about the what happened to us all day long. That's not the power in the story. The story is how'd you get there? Like, how did you move away from it to become who you are now? So through that process, how did that change you getting ready for that marathon?
Well, I will tell you that it radically changed me, because I thought I was persistent. I thought I knew how to set goals. I thought I was disciplined. I thought I had mental toughness. Nothing came close to doing that. Realized that I had to run a marathon. I had to do 20-mile training runs. The year that I ran the marathon, I did 500 training miles. I went through 4 pairs of shoes.
Wow.
I was, at Fenway Park, they give tours and they start out on Jersey Street. And I was running on Sunday mornings, early when there was no traffic. I was part of the tour sometimes. I'd run by and the guy would say, "This is a 70-year-old who's running the marathon." And I used to joke. I said, "One of these times I'm just going to go inside and run around the warning track." But the interesting thing about this from a purpose point of view is I was raising money for the Boston Bruins Foundation. And when I was in a nonprofit, they supported me. So I was giving back, if you will. And I solicited donations from other people, and I put white athletic tape on both of my arms with everybody's name on it. And as I passed the Ted Williams statue, I dedicated that lap to one of the people and thought about our relationship, etc. So I was in shock that the first 20 miles were a piece of cake. Because I was ready. I was mentally ready. I was physically ready. I had a doctor on call. You know what I mean? It was just an experience. And I tell people this, the biggest surprise of the whole thing, and the thing I'll always remember, is this. I think we live for people to say to us, "I'm proud of you." I never got more, "I am proud of you. You inspired me," than after I ran that marathon. I even had, part of it was on television. The local NBC station covered it. I even had people who were in Boston for the marathon come down and offer to run a lap with me in exchange for a donation.
That's awesome.
So anytime you can inspire people, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's a good deal, no matter how much.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that the other podcast that I host is dedicated to obstacle racing, and similar story. I decided to do the 30-mile Spartan Ultra, which is like, yeah, you got hills, you got mud, you got water. Like it's dark when you start. It was freezing cold the morning of. I think it was 31 degrees at the start. And it took 11 and a half hours because you're doing 60 some odd obstacles as well. And the way you get through it, and it's the same principles here. Like if somebody comes to the gym and they want to lose 20 pounds, like you're not going to lose 20 pounds tomorrow. Like it's a process. You got to follow the process. And being out there on course, right around mile 17, my legs were like, "This is stupid." Like there's 13 miles to go. But I just shifted my mind and was like, we're just going to focus mile to mile. Let's just get to mile 18 and then we'll reassess. All right, let's get to mile 19 and then we'll reassess. And just repeated that until you jump the fire. Well, to be fair, my legs were toast at the end and I could not jump over the fire. So I just stepped over the fire, the pose for my photo, and then got my medal. Like it was like the best, worst thing I've ever done, because it definitely changed me as a person. This was in 2018, and I thought I trained insane as it was. But like after that experience, I was like, you can definitely push yourself even further.
Yeah. One of the things that I also realized, if you stop and think about this, in business, if you are an achiever, your leaders aren't really going to set challenging goals for you because you're already producing. They don't want to abuse you. They don't want to push you too far because you're pushing yourself. But if you walked up to a 70-year-old and said, "I think you should run a marathon," you'd be crazy. And so I realized that if I was going to set challenging goals, if I was going to have challenging goals to deal with, I had to set them myself.
Absolutely. One of my gym clients slash friends, this was years ago, like maybe 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. But we were doing a 5K. Now, like I did track and field growing up, but I was a jumper sprinter. Like doing distances really wasn't my thing. And like we were just getting into the obstacle racing then. So my endurance isn't what it is now. So we're doing this 5K, and it was just like a big straight line. Then you looped around and you came back. So on the loop around, before we even get there, we see this guy, 74 years old, just moving, right? Just moving. Excuse me. So put it in perspective. My friend and I, we did this 5K. I think it was in 41 minutes. This 74-year-old did it in 23. 20. I had to go over and shake his hand. I was like, I don't know how you did that. I am dying. At the time, I was in my 30s, maybe right around 40, and he blew away. He finished third overall.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. So, what do you see yourself doing next?
So, I published my first book at 72.
Okay.
What I did was, when you remember when email was invented?
I do.
When email was
mid to mid 90s, right? Somewhere around there.
Yeah. So when email was invented, I started sending a Friday update to my team, like with reminders and deadlines and shout outs. Every Friday I did it, and I ended it with what I called a commentary or an observation. And I did that for decades. And then when I was furloughed, I really needed to keep doing that. So I started something called a Wednesday weblog. It was going to be Sunday, but I didn't finish it in time. So it became a Wednesday weblog. And I started sending it to all the contacts I wasn't going to have anymore because I was furloughed. And I've been doing it for 5 years. Every Wednesday, I send out a Wednesday weblog. And the book is titled Observations at the Speed of Life. And I talk about different things. Like, have you noticed that how many more vehicles are backing into parking spaces now? Have you ever paid attention to people who don't return their shopping carts? But I also do business things. You know, one of my business cliches is fast, cheap, or good. Pick two. That's usually what people are faced with. And if you can do all three of them, you're going to be successful. So I put 60 of these stories into a book. So the subtitle is A Lesson in Every Moment. And I published it last year. I just finished narrating the audio version. And I declined my publisher's offer to have someone narrate it because they're first person stories and I write like I talk. And so some people say they can hear me when they read my weblog. So I published the book. I'm probably going to have another one come out. The audiobook is ready. It's also going to be in Spanish. And I hope to eventually be fat, dumb, and happy and not do anything other than collect royalties.
I love that. So what was your motivation for writing the book?
It was already written.
Okay.
So I had already written everything. I just had to compile them and edit it a little bit. And I will tell you that the strangest thing happened when I got the first copy of it. I realized it was my legacy. That long after I'm gone, this would live on. And I don't know, I didn't cry, but it was definitely a touching moment for me.
Yeah, and that's huge. I was actually a guest on a podcast a couple of days ago, and they pretty much asked me the same question. I said, it's about what you leave behind. I said, like, if I was to die tomorrow, right, I have 343 episodes of this podcast. I've been in 100 online publications. I've been on countless other podcasts. Like, there's so much stuff that I left behind for people who are struggling. They can find some inspiration. You know, like I don't do this for selfish reasons. I don't do this for monetary reasons. It's like I do this because I myself have felt hurt. I felt pain. I was told I would never run a jump again, and I defied those odds. And people can hear those stories and be like, you know what, he got through it. Maybe I can get through it too. So legacy, I definitely feel you on that, because I just published my first book about maybe 5 months ago, and it's just an awesome feeling to like see people posting pictures up on social media holding something that you created. It's just a truly amazing feeling.
Absolutely. Not only that, it's a pretty big ego trip.
Yeah, for me, it's humbling, because similar to what you said, like I didn't create anything new. Like I just took the principles that I used to come back from the things that I came back with, and I put them into actionable worksheets. So it's not just a book that you just read about me and my life story. Like there's 13 worksheets built into that 18 chapter book. So
cool.
7/8 of the book, it's interactive worksheets giving people the how-to, because they always ask me, how do you XYZ? It's like, this is how you do it. And again, to your point about legacy, God willing, that book's still going to be around 100 years from now.
Well, at least 50. I'm not shooting for 100, but at least 50.
I'm shooting for the stars, baby. I want 100. Oh man. So do you have anything in your life that you regret? And it doesn't have to be anything major. Just
I do. I do.
What's that?
I didn't get more mentors earlier. I didn't realize the power of mentors. I just didn't have. I wish I'd had a mentor when I selected my course of study. I wish I had a mentor when I started my career. I just, I'm not saying getting gas was the first time I had a mentor, but it's the first one I remember that made a difference. And what happened is, because of that, when I decided to run a marathon, I knew I needed a mentor. You know what I mean? I mean, it really changed things for me. And so I write about mentorship a lot. And if there was a 15-year-old kid who was asking me for advice, I would say, get as many mentors as you can. Kind of build a personal board of directors of people that you can talk to about different things.
I love that answer. That's spot on, because things changed for me in my fitness business when I got a business coach. Because like just trying to do everything myself, because society overplays independence. It's like we are social beings. We are meant to work together. And it's like once I got that, like I've always had the gift of gab, but when I got a speaker coach and I went down, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Eric Thomas. He's one of the big names in speaking. And I went down and I got trained by his team. And my sister's on. My bad. What did she say? I was in a meeting where I passed on your podcast info. Awesome. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's like, having that mentor is huge. And even people come in here in the gym, I tell them, it's like, if you guys have stuff going on in the outside world, if you want someone to talk to you, it's like, come and talk to me. It's like, because you guys know I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to sugarcoat your situation. Like, I'm not out to hurt anybody's feelings, but just if someone is banging their head against the wall, I'm going to tell them you're banging your head against the wall. It's like, that's what's going wrong here. But yes, to your point, having a mentor is everything. So out of all of your mentors, and you can't pick the first one, because the first one is always the most impactful. So who is the second most impactful one?
I would say it was my marathon trainer, because it was such an impossible task. To give me a course of action, to give me strengthening exercises, to give me stretching exercises, to monitor my progress. And then, I think one of the big characteristics of mentors is when someone mentors you, they believe in you. And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes someone else believing in you to achieve.
Yes, absolutely. So going back to my obstacle course example, remember I was doing one of the longer races. I think this one was around 14 miles or so. And we were about halfway through. And as we're going through, there's a woman. I could tell this was probably her first race because she didn't have a backpack with water or supplies or anything.
Yeah.
You know, she was dressed in skimpy clothing. I was like, do you not have friends that have done this before? You know, but as I'm walking by, I heard her say, "I don't think I can do this." And so I stopped. I had extra supplies, and so I gave her some supplies to ward off cramping and all that. And all I did was I put my hand on her shoulder. I said, "One foot in front of the other until you get to the finish line." That was it. Nothing profound, right? I didn't go into any deep, psychology.
Mhm.
And then she found me in the festival area afterwards, and she's like, "Thank you very much for that." She's like, "That was just the boost I needed," because she wasn't with the team; she was solo running. So
Yeah.
she was letting the complexity and the toughness of the course mentally break her down, and it was just that one sentence was enough to get her through.
Small act of kindness.
Absolutely. All right, so we got a few minutes here. So so when people get your book, what do you want their biggest takeaway to be?
That there's a lesson in every moment. That there's a lesson in running the marathon. There's a lesson in getting fired. There's a lesson in going to the supermarket and returning your shopping cart. So I once had this job that was so bad that people kept asking me why I stayed. And I said, because I'm learning so much. I got 10 years of experience in 2 years. And it benefited me for the rest of my career. One of the things we kind of haven't talked about, and I think is probably in your DNA, you asked me about my ability or whatever. And one of the things that I am a disciple about is leading by example. I don't think you read it in a book. I don't think you read it in a book. I think you either lead by example or you're a hypocrite. And one of my cliches is I never asked anybody to do anything I haven't done, I won't do, or I can't do. So if I'm going to ask someone to do something and I haven't done it, I'm going to do it first so that I can say that. I had this one experience where a college kid, I was running a restaurant. College kid comes up to me and he says, "My paycheck's wrong." And I said, "Well, I'll fix it next week." And I turned away and he said, now I'm an adult and he's a college kid. He turns to me and he says, "Hey, excuses are for beginners and losers. Which one are you?"
Wow.
Now that stuck with me. You know what I mean? Because we all kind of, we judge ourselves based on our intentions and others based on their actions, so
yes.
So things get,
I'm going to have to steal that one.
That's okay.
Yeah, my sister likes that one too. I love that. That's so true. So back to your point about outworking, right? So my daughter works with me at a restaurant. So last summer, it's a seasonal restaurant. It's like April to December. And so I work outside, she works inside. And so she radios to me to come to the side door. So I come up, I'm like, what's going on? And she's all stressed out. And she's like, "I'm doing everything in there and people are standing up against the wall." And I stopped. I was like, whoa. Because you can. Okay? Because you can. Not everybody has your drive. Not everybody has your work ethic. And you're not going to dumb yourself down to where they are. If they're comfortable operating at that pace, let them. Because when the time comes for advancement, they're gonna pick you. Because like when I got that job, I had freshly lost everything, and that was the first place to offer me a position, and it was busting tables. Now, remember I said earlier, I was a general manager, so I had to swallow a whole lot of humble pie. But I also said I'm not going to be busting tables long. Because I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to dance circles around everybody to make it undeniable we need to put him somewhere else. And it only took 30 days. Then they moved me to a different position. But it's like it's the mindset. I could have been like, "Woe is me. I'm 48 years old. I'm busting tables." But no, I said, I'm going to go in there and show them, like, I just never stop moving. And that's what you do. You got to show up. If you want opportunities, you got to show up. But we're going to ask you for a final word, whatever you want to say, however deep you want to get, however short or long you want to make it. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm going to read a quote to you.
Okay.
I was 21, working in a restaurant. My first day in the restaurant, I saw this hanging on the wall. And it's a quote from Calvin Coolidge, who was president of the United States and was also a Massachusetts boy. And here's how it goes. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race.
I love that. I love that. On one of my Facebook pages, actually, no, I think I changed it since I published the book, but it says, failure cannot cope with persistence.
Right.
Right. So absolutely right. Straight to the point. So for those of you who tuned in, I hope you guys got a lot out of this episode. If you joined us halfway, please go back to the beginning and watch the rest. Ed, it was fabulous talking to you. You got a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight. You are funny. I got to say, I saw that on your profile that you throw in humor and you do it beautifully. So you are.
Maybe I should consider being a stand-up comic maybe next as my next step. What do you think?
Absolutely. Maybe you should. But yeah, you're invited back anytime you want to come back. And I do panels as well. If you want to be a part of a panel where usually I have myself and 6 other guests, but this particular one only had 4. But I pick one topic and we all round table that one topic. So if you're interested in that, I'll add you to the list.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate it. And, like I said at the beginning, you're doing God's work by helping people. So I'm very proud to have been on your show.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. A lot. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.
You've been listening to Shut Up and Grind. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. Robert has over 20 years experience pouring his knowledge and expertise at many events in the service and fitness industry, as well as secondary schools and universities. He has a true passion for helping others break through the barriers that are holding them back. To book Robert B. Foster to speak or to reach out, go to robertbfoster.com. Till next time, shut up and grind.